embracing vulnerability. And so this goes back to, being stuck because you're like deer in the headlights, froze,
right,
because you're afraid of messing up. If we can understand, and I've come to terms with this in my old age, I've come to terms with this more and more, of just being vulnerable, meaning like, hey, I make mistakes. And so I'm trying to help others, like, okay, so when you're speaking on stage, if you have to do some public speaking, like teaching or something, whether it's in Sunday school, or I was thinking about this with the children's ministry workshop down in Redlands, California. Mm-hmm. If you were speaking and you are thinking of, okay, do they think I'm cool? I mean, I want people to think I'm cool. Do they think I'm cool, or do they think I'm dumb? Do they think I'm stupid?
Right.
If you are thinking of it in those terms, you can actually lock yourself up, and you're trying to go down your notes, and you're just like, self-conscious and looking, and versus if you can walk out and say, okay, I have a topic that I'm teaching. These people came to this session because they wanted to hear it. So I need to help them. How can I help them?
Right.
And that goes back to, now I am showing up for them. It's not about me. And so then if I fumble a word or something, I'll just be vulnerable and oops, and people laugh and they they're with you.
Right.
What's that? They're laughing with you, not at you.
Yes. And keep saying that to yourself. Keep saying that to yourself. It's nope.
Yeah, and so embracing that vulnerability, and that goes back to the opening we do every week on the podcast, is see the magic or disaster
absolutely
that happens behind the scenes. We've talked about this before in the podcast, but one of the ones I'll mention is right here, right upstairs where we are right now, and of course behind the cameras there's some slides and stuff, but right in this area, we built a river. Mm-hmm. And now the building was unfinished, so we didn't have carpet and there was no sheetrock. So, there's certain risks that you weigh, right? We might not do this now, but we built this river and it leaked.
Oh yes.
And I mean, it was downstairs. It was just dumping water. And so it was a disaster. I mean, it was a mess. And we had put some insulation underneath the plastic because we were afraid the plastic would rub and get a hole. And tear, so the insulation got all wet. I mean, it was disgusting. It was a nasty mess. One night I was up here. I was on a Saturday night up here till Sunday morning. People showed up for practice. I was still in my jeans and stuff, all sweaty and nasty because I had been up here all night cleaning up, mopping up the mess and trying to redo it. So it was a disaster, and I wouldn't suggest it for anybody. But out of all of that, this big disaster came something very, very cool, and we have pictures to prove it. We had a live river right here, right up here in this area. Probably, I don't know, the linear feet of it was probably 30-something feet.
Oh, yeah.
30 or
at least
more.
That. Yep.
And it was about 4 feet wide, and it was going, and it had rushing water. I mean, one corner had white water rapids because it was going around so fast, and because we had pumps and stuff in it. Had some blue dye in there, and we put actual rocks in it. It turned out awesome. I could truly say, is epic.
Yeah.
And so that was the magic, but there was a disaster all behind that before we got there.
Yep.
And that wasn't like an emergency situation like a lifeguard. That wasn't a situation like teaching salvation or whatever. So it wasn't a dire thing. But those kids were waiting for us to show up and do something epic, and we did it.
Yeah. Because
we showed up and we made some mistakes.
Yeah, exactly.
And we had to, I mean, I had people tease me, about it, and hey, we made mistakes, but it was awesome.
It's true. And you look back in any sort of grand invention or discovery, there's always failure.
Oh yeah.
Always failure before that. So to think that if you're thinking, well, I can't do this because I'll make a mistake or I'll fail or whatever. That's everyone in the history of mankind.
Of course, you will.
That's how you gain. I'm trying to think of this thing. I was trying to think of it, but you don't have any sort of success without failure.
Yeah, you have to. Yeah, I can't remember. There's a saying.
There is a saying.
There's the opposite saying is failure is not an option or whatever. But it is an option, and it should be. John C. Maxwell. I reference him like almost every podcast because I read his stuff so much. But he has a book called, I believe the title is "Failing Forward," and that's what it's about. You know?
Yeah, like the only failure is if you stop. You failed, and now, I'm not going to do this anymore.
Oh, that's good.
There's a saying in there too somewhere, and it's like, but
that's the truth.
Like if you just fail and be like, okay, I'm not doing it again. Well, yeah, you failed now. You have
failed. Yeah, exactly.
You hadn't failed before. You just didn't accomplish what you had set out to do. And that's, I mean, you look at that with New Year's resolutions and stuff, and people say, well, if I don't set any goals, then I won't.
Yeah,
I won't have to break anything or whatever. And it's true. It's like, well,
like if you have if you don't aim at anything, you'll hit it every time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which it's kind of true because not one of us has just come up here or done something through our children's ministry and been like, successful right out the bat. I didn't mess up. No, everything. I've never misquoted something or done the skit wrong or
and here's the thing is if you can't look back in the past year or maybe even less time than that and find somewhere where you failed, you're probably not doing enough. You're not stretching enough. You're not and this is, I'm preaching to myself now, is you're not pushing the limits enough. If you haven't messed up on something and like, oops, I got to change that, then you're probably not pushing those boundaries.
That's true.
You're in your comfort zone.
Yeah, you're just there.
Yeah.
Yep. That's good.
I remember this story. It was so funny. Pastor told it a long time ago. So we have a Christian school in our church, and I remember this story. When in the Christian school, when you get done with they call them goals. When you get done with your goals, your workload, then there's certain activities you can do, and it's probably changed since I was involved in the school. But anyway, so there's different things you can do. Well, this boy, he had like put up his flag, like, can I do, what can I do or whatever. And so they gave him like something to play with, and he put up his flag because he got bored with that. And they're like, okay, they give him something else. I don't know all the, it'd be better if I knew the details, but they gave him all these different things. And then, well, read your Bible. And so he's reading his Bible. So then I think Pastor, he comes over and he's like, yes, answers his flag. And he's like, can I have something else to do? He's like, well, you could read your Bible. He's like, oh, I already read that. And it was almost like, I read that, the whole thing, I'm done.
I'm done. I read it.
That's like when people, my kids and even other people, sometimes they'll tell me like, well, I've tried that before. And I'm like, okay, but I've been there and it does work. So you tried that before. How much? What did you try? I remember Seth Godin, another guy I like to read some of his stuff. He's a marketing guy. He talks about, if you have a failed book or a book that hasn't launched, or he has something I like is he said there's no such thing as writer's block. And so he talks about writer's block, and I can't remember the exact how he terms it, but he says basically that show me all of your crumpled up pieces of paper. Show me all your throwaways that you've done. And his point is, if you don't have a garbage can full of throwaways, to speak metaphorically, then you're not there yet. Yeah. You haven't failed yet. Yeah. And so if you can push through a little bit more, then you're going to stop talking about how you failed, because you're going to find that you did it. You know?
Yeah.